Hi there, my name is Rachel Rambach and I'm a board-certified music therapist in Springfield, Illinois. Today I'm going to talk to you about my songwriting approach for writing goal-based music therapy and music enrichment songs for children. This is something that I've been doing since I started my internship about 13 years ago. And although I know everybody has a different approach to songwriting, I feel that my method has become really solid over the years. And so today I'm going to share that approach with you. The first step in my process is to start with a question. So there's always a reason for writing a song, whether that is to progress toward a specific goal, to elicit a certain feeling or emotion, to support instrument play, to encourage movement or dancing. So my first job is to answer that question, what am I looking to achieve through this song? The other important question to ask is, who is my target audience for this song? Am I writing it for one specific music therapy client? Am I writing it for a group or for a class? Knowing who that audience is and who will benefit from that song will help me to target specifically to that individual or group. Now on to the steps in actually creating the song. So the first step in my process is to do the research. Since I'm working with young children and then a variety of ages as well, many of my songs are based on a concept or a cognitive skill. And so I need to make sure that I'm including all of the information correctly and factually when I'm writing the lyrics for that song. Another important thing to do is to talk with members of that person's support team. So teachers, administrators, parents, whoever else is familiar with the child and with how they're learning this concept in other settings will help me to mirror that language and that approach that they're getting from other areas. Next, I start with a key idea or phrase. And sometimes when I start the song, I'll use that as my title, or I'll use that as the seed to start writing my chorus or the first verse. And of course, that title could change later, and maybe even that key word or phrase will change, but having that to start with really helps me to hone in on the topic of the song and kind of build it from there. My setup always looks the same when I start writing my lyrics. I just start with a blank document, nothing on it, and from there I'll just compose the lyrics, and there's a lot of deleting and editing as I go, but my goal is to get all of the words up on the page before I take the next step. One of my favorite resources to use as I'm writing the lyrics is a website called RhymeZone, and it's just rhymezone.com. And this is a handy tool to have next to me as I'm creating the lyrics because, of course, I've got lots of rhymes in my head already, but it's always nice to have that little assistant when I'm stuck on a word or stuck on what the next line will be. It helps to just pop that word into RhymeZone, and it comes up with lots of different rhymes, all categorized by the number of syllables. So it's a really helpful tool that I always recommend when it comes to songwriting. Even though I always start with the lyrics, and like I said, I like to write out all of the lyrics before I take the next step, something that usually happens is that the melody starts to form as I'm writing those lyrics. So what I do to capture those bits and pieces as the melody comes to me is I record it using the Voice Memos app in my iPhone. This is so handy because I can just sing that melody and kind of match it up with the words. And even though it's a very rough draft, it helps me to piece together the entire song once all of the lyrics have been written. Once I have all of the lyrics written and those bits and pieces of melody recorded in my Voice Memos app, the next step is to put those two things together and come up with the chords for the song. So what I'll do is I'll sit at my computer with my document of lyrics and my iPhone next to me, and then my guitar in my lap so that I can listen to that melody that I've created and kind of figure out what the chords are on the guitar, and then I'll create the lead sheet on the computer to go along with those lyrics. And as I'm going, I'll kind of play through it as far as I get and just make sure that it sounds cohesive and that it flows well and that I still really like it. And of course, lots of changes are made from those initial voice memo recordings to the final product. But that's a really nice middle step to help me get to that final product. Once I've figured out all of the chords for the song and have them written out on my lead sheet, I'll sing through and record myself doing so in my voice memos app, and that will serve as my full rough draft of that song. And I'll usually do that a few times just to make sure there are no final edits or changes that I want to make before I create the final version of that song. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the song structure of most of the songs that I write for music therapy and for music enrichment. Most of these songs are pretty straightforward and are made up of chorus, verse, or vice versa. And I do that very strategically because I found that the simpler the song structure, the more easily my young students and clients are able to learn the song, sing along with it, and then be able to transfer the information from that song into other areas of their lives. Now, I haven't always done that. When I first started writing songs, I had a tendency to overcomplicate them, and oftentimes they would have multiple verses, a bridge, a much more complicated song structure because I thought that's the way it had to be. But I quickly learned, thanks to my students' very honest feedback and just how they were responding to the songs, that the simpler, the better. Once I have that rough draft of my song recorded, then I can really start to play with the musical qualities of the song. And what I mean by that is rhythm. Is it going to be a straight rhythm? Is it a swung rhythm? What will work best for that particular client or group or class? Next, I focus on the tempo. Does this song work best as a slower song? Are there lots of words where having a slower tempo will make it easier to really hear the words and sing along with them? Or does it work better as a more upbeat song? The other musical consideration is the instrumentation. So if this is a song to support instrument play, if we're working on fine or gross motor skills, then I take into account what instruments we'd be using in the actual session or class. And if there aren't specific instruments that this song is helping to facilitate, then I can really get creative and kind of use my imagination to figure out what is going to work best as far as the instrumentation goes for that song. There are just a few more things that I do before recording that final version of the song. The first is to test drive that song with my target audience. So that might mean bringing the song to the music therapy session and seeing how the client responds to it, and then making changes from there if needed. I also have the advantage of having 2 young children that live in my house, and they are always up for listening to my new songs and giving me very honest feedback on whether it's a catchy song, whether they enjoy it, and also just seeing how they respond to it is helpful. Next, I play around with the song and experiment a little bit. So that might mean playing it with the guitar or the ukulele, or accompanied by a drum, or nothing at all, to see how it works best and how I'm best able to actually facilitate that song to make it really meaningful and effective for my group or client, because I want to mimic that experience as much as possible in the actual recording that I'm creating. The third thing I do is make note of any changes that I find myself making as I'm using this song in a session or a class. So if I constantly find myself changing up the tempo, or playing it with a capo in a different key, or changing the words around, or missing words, those are all clues to me that the final version may need to be tweaked a bit before I record that final version. The last step is to apply those changes if I've made any. So that may mean pulling up the lead sheet and changing any chords or tweaking lyrics or making a note of the use of a capo so that I can then record my final rough draft that I'll use as a reference point for my final recording. Now, as a music therapist, primarily using your original songs in sessions or groups or classes, it's not mandatory to record your songs unless you're sharing them with your clients and with those who support them so that they can then use that song or play that recording in other settings in order to better familiarize your client with that song outside of music therapy sessions. And that's something that I've been doing for a long time, even before I started creating resources for other music therapists, because I saw just how valuable it was for my clients to be exposed to those songs throughout the entire week so that they could then come back to our music therapy sessions and really achieve those goals much quicker because they'd listened to the song and learned the words and worked towards those goals that that song was targeting. Your recording does not have to be fancy. It does not have to be multi-tracked. You don't have to have harmony tracks. You don't have to have any instrumentation at all if you don't want to. This is something that I've had a lot of practice with and that I really enjoy doing, and it's all been self-taught. I use GarageBand, which is available on any Mac, and I know a lot of music therapists are familiar with this software, and it's really easy to create a nice quality recording, whether that's just for your client and his or her family or teacher, or if you want to share it as a resource for other professionals. I want to wrap up with a few pieces of advice that I've learned after years of writing goal-based songs for children. The first piece of advice is to not be intimidated by songwriting. I know that many people feel like songwriting is something that's outside of their wheelhouse or something that they're not experts in, and I was just the same when I started. I didn't take any formal songwriting courses in college or grad school. It was simply jumping in and writing that first song that gave me the permission to keep doing so. It's really amazing how effective an original, targeted, specific song can be compared to looking and searching for a song and then having to make those tweaks so that it really fits the needs of your client or group. My next piece of advice is to experiment with your own songwriting style and figure out what works best for you. As I've outlined, my songwriting style is pretty formulaic, but that's because it works best for me and I've had great results writing my songs this way. But you, on the other hand, might find it much more effective to write a song on the spot in your session with your client, and then maybe you preserve that song in the moment and record it later and write it down later so that you can use it in the future with other clients. So take some different approaches and figure out what works best for you as a songwriter and what makes you feel most comfortable. If you have any questions about writing goal-based songs for children in music therapy settings, feel free to contact me. My email is rachel@listenlearnmusic.com, and I'm always happy to answer any questions on this topic. Thank you so much for watching.